Okay, so once again, welcome everyone to this joint Allen Heath and Audinate webinar. My name is Nick Beretta. I'm head of product at Allen Heath, and I will be joined today by Gus from Audinate on the other side of the line. Now, Allen Heath and Audinate have a long history of working together. I think my very first webinar with Allen Heath almost 10 years ago was at the launch of the Dante card for the iLive and GLD mixing systems. And that card amazingly is still available today for the Me Hub, the personal monitoring system from Allen Heath. But today we'll dive deeper into Dante, have a look at some of the other products and solutions that we have on offer for the Dante ecosystem, as well as a look at some of the new concepts we've been developing and designing in the last few months in an exclusive preview for all of you watching the webinar. We'll end on a couple of application examples and case studies, and more importantly, on your questions. My colleague Val Gilbert will be monitoring the questions as they come in through the webinar, so please use the questions or Q&A button and window in your Zoom interface. I'm sure that most of you are familiar with Zoom by now. And send in any question you might have throughout the webinar. Don't necessarily wait until the end. Val will be answering some of these real time and will be picking up some for me and Gus at the end of the webinar. Between the two of us, Gus and I, we speak English, Italian, Spanish. I think he beats me to it because he speaks some Portuguese, maybe another language as well. So if English is not your first language and you're watching from maybe South America or other parts of the world, feel free to send in questions in those languages as well. And without further ado, I let Gus introduce himself and the world of Dante.
Thank you, Nick, and thanks to everybody for joining us today. My name is Augusto Marcondes, but you can call me Gus. I am the Technical Training Manager for the EMEA regions in everything regarding Dante. So, before we talk about Dante, I would like to introduce you to Audinate, the company that has developed Dante. It started in Australia with IT engineers trying to solve connectivity and communication problems within AV devices. Therefore, they have developed Dante as a 100% interoperable solution for all AV manufacturers. And actually, to this day, we are very proud that we sum up to over 450 manufacturers with over 2,800 products that are Dante devices already there for users to interact with. So, Audinate works with each manufacturer to specify the best module for their products. According to the specific application, Audinate and the manufacturers will work together to say which module is the best for that specific device in that application. The Dante module sits right after everything audio related. In other words, the Dante device delivers to the Dante module the binary digitalized audio samples. The Dante module will encapsulate those digital values and send them across the network as Ethernet frames. Simultaneously, the Dante modules are also sending PTP packets to synchronize all devices in the network for a consistent playout across devices, no matter how large your system might be. So, for manufacturers, we produce the modules. For users, we produce a lot of user interfaces. The basic tool and actually the primary routing, naming, latency setting, clocking adjustment, your monitor of everything that is happening in your system right now is Dante Controller. Also, we produce DVS and Dante Via, which are two ways to transform your computer into a Dante device as well. DVS will be towards multi-track playback and recording, allowing up to 64 channels in and 64 channels out for you to receive audio or send from your favorite digital audio workstation or any other application that you're using inside your computer, wanting to communicate with a network. Dante Via works differently. It actually allows each singular application inside your computer to become a Dante transmitter or receiver, allowing you, for example, to use physical Dante devices into your conference calls with Zoom, Skype, or Microsoft Teams, and so on. Sitting on top of all Dante networks, we have our Dante Domain Manager, of which we'll be talking later on this session. For legacy devices that were not Dante yet and then wish to become a Dante device and exist inside the Dante network system, we offer the Avio adapters in different formats, from analog to Dante, in and out, USB. Also now we are releasing the Bluetooth Avio adapter to allow for Bluetooth devices to communicate with the Dante network. So, in one sentence, Dante is a complete solution that includes hardware and software for transporting time-aligned digital audio between devices connected to any standard IP networks, which means that you don't need specific infrastructure to run your Dante systems. If you're curious and you want to know more, please access our free certification program divided in 3 levels. 1, a more basic approach, level 2, intermediate, and we'll also be covering redundancy settings. And on the level 3, we'll be teaching you how to implement Dante to existing networks, where you're going to be optimizing some features for your Dante network as well. There are some updates for the new 2021 certification program, such as the Dante Firmware Updater, which is a one-click solution to update all firmwares of all devices in your network, Dante Domain Manager, how to log into domains, how to secure your systems, Dante Embedded Platform, and Dante Application Library, which are new ways of Dante to present itself. These and also some elective disciplines will be offered with tips for live sound applications, broadcast, commercial AV installations, and also audio tips for IT managers. If you guys are interested, I invite you to visit right now audinate.com/certify and get yourselves certified. Back to you, Nick, and we catch up later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gus. That was a brilliant introduction to Dante. And now let's dive into some of the Allen Heath solutions and products that we have on offer. Starting with the interface cards for the D-Live and Avantis first. We have 2 cards available for these digital mixing systems. One comes with 128 input channels and 128 output channels. And you can fit up to 5 of these in a D-Live S-Class systems, or up to 2 in an Avantis system. They operate in 96 kilohertz, but they are switchable back to 48 kilohertz for compatibility with the 48K Dante equipment. We also have a 64x64 card available, again for the D-Live and Avantis, which is more cost effective. So not everyone needs 128 channels of audio in and out, particularly if you're using an Avantis mixer, you might not need the extra channels. So this option is also available. Both of these cards, as I said, are switchable in sample rate. That doesn't change the sample rate of the internal engine of the consoles, which always operate at 96 kilohertz, but you can downsample to 48K on the I/O port where the Dante card is fitted. There is a dedicated control network port that you can see in this picture, and that allows you to connect your laptop for Dante controller while you're using the primary and secondary port for audio streaming or audio connection to other Dante devices. The primary and secondary port are redundancy capable, so they can be used in redundant mode, or you can set the card in Dante controller as into switched mode. And what that does essentially gives you the primary and secondary port as 2 ports of a switch that you can connect in parallel to 2 different Dante devices, perhaps a virtual sound card on one side and another mixer or amplifier on the other. Both of these cards also have an internal network bridge. There is a switch on the front panel that you can see there, labeled network bridge, and that connects together, bridges the D-Live or Avantis control network with the Dante control network. And I stress control only, so there is no audio passing through this bridge. So there is no risk of flooding or saturating the control network with Dante audio, for example. But the benefit of that is that when the bridge is on, it means that you can control your Dante network with a Dante controller, and you can control the D-Live or Avantis with a D-Live Director or similar from the same laptop, from the same machine. Of course, you will need to pay attention to your IP addresses and network configuration if you wish to do so. We also have another card, which is the SQ Dante card. This one is compatible with SQ digital mixers and with the AHM64 matrix processor. It's a 64 by 64 card, also 96 kilohertz, switchable to 48 kilohertz. The primary and secondary port, as with the D-Live card, they can be set in redundant or in switched mode for connection of two different devices. And there is also an internal control network bridge. There is no switch on the front panel in this case, and that's because the switch for the internal control network bridge for this card is within the SQ or AHM64 software. So in the SQ Mixer or AHM64 System Manager, you will find the option for the Dante card to bridge the control networks together. You might have noticed a V2 label on the bottom left of the panel of this card, and that's because this is the second generation of the SQ Dante card, which is compatible with the AHM64 matrix processor. The V1 was only compatible with SQ mixers, not with the AHM. That's the only difference. So there is no difference in spec or performance, and certainly no difference in audio quality for SQ customers. So these are the cards that we have available. On top of these, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have the M Dante original Dante card for the iLive GLD or Mi Hub for the Mi personal mixing system. Now let's have a look at some of the I/O expanders, I/O solutions that we have as part of our Everything I/O ecosystem. We have a couple of Dante options. One is the DT164W on the left, and one is the DT168 on the right. So let's have a look at these two in a bit more detail. The 168, as the name suggests, 16 inputs, 8 outputs, high quality Allen Heath D-Live preamps on board, 96 kilohertz, but switchable to 48 kilohertz. So once again, you can use it with 48K Dante equipment. It's a portable stage box design, but you can also rack mount it with an optional 19-inch kit. The primary and secondary ports, they come with Ethicon robust connectors, and they can be set again in redundant or switched mode. The preamps on the DT168 can be controlled directly from D-Live, Avantis, SQ, or AHM64. So as soon as you patch those sockets to an I/O card in one of these mixers using Dante controller, the mixer will recognize the preamps and the sockets and offer you all of the controls for the gain, phantom power, and pad within your mixer interface. I'm sure there will be questions on how we can control these preamps otherwise without an Allen Heath mixers. So stay with us because we will address that question in a few minutes. The other Dante expander that we offer is the 164W, 16 inputs, 4 outputs. This one is designed primarily for permanent installation, and we'll see why. To start with, again, same sample rate options, same options with the primary and secondary port in switched or redundant mode. But what's unique about this stage box is the mounting options and the power options as well. So you can mount it in a wall, in a plastered wall or wall cavity, using the mounting frame which comes with the box. You can also reverse mount that mounting frame if you want to mount it on top of a wall, so sticking out of a concrete wall, for example. And in either of these applications, what I found, for example, which is very useful, is you can run a cable, a fixed cable to the primary port and then set the two ports into switched mode and have a second cable from the 164W in the wall, serving a DT16.8 portable stage box around the stage or around the room. In terms of other mounting options, you can fit it in a standard NEMA box. So the dimensions are so that it would fit in an 11 by 11 inch NEMA box, which is the electrical standard in the US. You would need a custom frame to support it in that NEMA box, but it does fit. It was designed to fit in terms of dimensions. And you can also mount it in a floor pocket in theater applications or stages. You can mount it in a floor pocket, and Ace Backstage, which is a big supplier of stage equipment in the US, has on catalog the 17.4 SLBK, which is pre-made compatible with this DT16.4W stage box. Power options. So you can power it, of course, with the standard IEC mains cable, but we found that in a lot of countries, the regulations do not allow a flexi IEC cable in a wall cavity inside the wall. So what you can do with the 16.4 is you can remove the IEC inlet, the IEC block, and you can replace it with a gland module that comes, again, with a box. So you can have an arm mode cable going straight to the unit, screw terminals inside with a gland protection on the panel, and that can be certified by the electrical engineer or the electrical contractor even before the AV installer comes into the venue with the rest of the equipment. There is a third power option, which is the 12 volts DC power input, which can also be used for as a backup power supply. So if you're using Crestron, AMX, or control systems with 12 volts distribution already in the wall or around the venue, you can also use that 12 volts feed for powering this unit. Now, all of these expanders and all of our cards are capable of speaking AS67 via Dante. And all of these products are also Dante Domain Manager ready. And Gus will explain a little bit more about Domain Manager in a couple of minutes. Now, a question that I get very often when I do presentations on our expanders and audio solutions is why and where would you use a DT box as opposed to a DX16.8 or DX16.4W? If you're familiar with our products, you probably know that these products, these stage boxes I was talking about, are also available in the DX flavor. So DX is our own proprietary layer 2 point-to-point protocol. So what are the advantages of one or the other? The DX boxes, like the DX16.8, are still very much plug and play. So you can plug a DX16.8 into a mixer. You don't have to worry with the network setup or routing with a laptop or clock configuration. You don't have to worry even with firmware matching, because the main mixer, be it an SQ or an Avantis or a D-Live, will check the firmware version of the expander and upgrade it or downgrade it automatically to match the version of firmware in the main processor or mixer. Also, the patching and settings always stay with the DX socket, with a DX port you connect to. So you can very easily replace a unit, whether it's a faulty unit or you're just swapping units in rental or hire situations. And as soon as you connect it, it will be firmware matched and taking all of the settings from the mixer in a matter of seconds. So where does it make sense to switch to the DT boxes instead? Well, to start with, the obvious advantage is that they are compatible with third-party Dante equipment. So you can connect a DT stage box directly and share audio with other third-party Dante systems. They are much more networkable than our DX stage boxes in terms of how many units you can connect, how you connect them together, in what network topologies. The DT Dante stage boxes, they can go through a switch, they can go through a managed switch or through a corporate network alongside other traffic. And that's because Dante is designed to be layer 3 friendly, to be TCP/IP friendly. And we cannot say the same of our DX protocol, for example. The DT boxes also allow any user in any point of the Dante configuration or setup to plug in a laptop or a computer into one of the ports, and assuming you're giving them permission to do so with Domain Manager, they can record, play, set up routing from any position in the building. The patching and setting stay with the unit, which means that once they're set up, you can take a DT16.8 and use it as a tracking device to record straight into a virtual sound card. And also they they enable true splits of the same preamp sockets to one, two, or many digital mixers or Dante devices. And by that, I mean that you can go straight from a DT16.8 to one, two, or several digital mixers, all of which, if they are Allen Heath mixers, they can all control the preamps and they can all share the same audio. With a DX16.8, what you would need to do in that case is to connect to a main mixer that has the control of the gain and then relay that signal using what we call tie lines to other devices. So I hope that that clarifies where to use one or the other. Now, let's go into possibly the most exciting part of this webinar, which is some product news. So these are some products that we've been developing in the last few months. When we announced this webinar last week, it was very interesting to see the reaction of people on Facebook and social media. Some people saying, well, surely it's a new Dante card. Surely it's a new mixer running Dante natively. Some of you got it right, some of you got it wrong. So what we are presenting today exclusively for you is 3 new breakout boxes or interfaces for Dante. For portable application or for permanent installation with different mounting options that we will see later. Now, these are in prototype stage. We are testing heavily, doing all of our normal cycle of thermal testing and evaluation. They will be available somewhere around the middle of 2021. So don't ask for availability or price just yet. Now, there are 3 products, and let's have a look at each of those in some more detail. So the DT20, that's a breakout box, with a 2-input box or interface with a switchable sample rate, 48 or 96 kilohertz, 2 combi connectors, so you can use the XLR input for microphone connection, or you can use the balanced jack input, which would also give you a 20 dB pad for line level sources. They have local gain control, so there is no remote gain control for these new boxes. If you are worried about users tampering with the gain, there's also the option of removing the gain knob and replacing it with a blanking lid that we provide in the box. Local phantom power switch, and they can be powered over Ethernet, so through the same Cat5 that you use for the Dante connection with the Ethercon connector, or they can be powered with a DC 12-volt power supply. It's a rugged aluminum box, very portable, very robust, pocket-sized, and we have optional ears coming for surface mounting or rack mounting. The DT02 is very simply a 2-channel line output interface on XLR connectors. Again, switchable sample rate, and with the same power over Ethernet or DC power options as the DT20. And finally, the 22, which is slightly different. It's a bit more compact in size, and it comes with 2 inputs and 2 outputs on Phoenix or Euroblock connectors. Switchable sample rate, again, local preamp control, including the mic or line switch, and trim pots for the gain setting, and phantom power control, and it can be PoE powered or powered with a DC 12 volts power supply. And this one will come with the ears for surface mounting already included in the box because it's mainly designed for fixed installation. So to give you an idea of how these rack mounting or mounting options work, the rack mounting one, you can have 1 or 2 units mounted side by side in any combination, and taking just one space, 1 U of 19-inch rack space. The surface mounting ears, they can be mounted facing top or bottom, so in either orientation. So you can mount the unit underneath a conference table, underneath a podium or plinth for a couple of podium microphones, or perhaps mounted vertically on a wall or partition or division. So that covers the products that we have on offer and that we will have on offer in the next year. And now Gus will touch on what's going on under the bonnet. So what Dante technologies and platforms we use in each and every of these products, as well as introducing Domain Manager.
Thank you, Nick, and it's very exciting for all of us to be following the new product releases by Allen Heath using the Dante technology. Actually, between the two brands, there is a lifelong partnership with so many options for users to choose from. Today, releasing the DT20, DT02, and DT22 with the Dante technology inside, we will be looking further, deeper in what's happening inside each of these products. Remember when we've said that Audinate works with the manufacturers to decide which module is the best for the product? In this case, the DT20 will be using the Ultimo X with 2 transmitting channels and up to 2 transmitting flows to the network. The DT20 will work in both 48 kHz or 96 kHz sample rate. The DT02 will then also have up to 2 receiving channels working at 48 or 96 kHz. So the DT22 will then have 2 transmitting channels, 2 receiving channels, can work at either 48 or 96 kHz, allowing up to 2 transmission flows. The bigger products, like the stage boxes or even small mixers, will have a Broadway chipset inside, allowing up to 16 transmission flows. So this is the DT168 audio expander. And then for the DT164W that I am very happy to have one sample here in my home studio, we'll have also the Broadway chipset inside with up to 16 transmission flows. So the more channels the device will need to handle, the bigger and the better the module. Going up to the optional cards in the SQ Avantis and D-Live products, you will find the IP Core module, which is a very powerful module working with audio encapsulation, commanding all those clock followers, and being able to send so many flows across the network. With the Dante technology offering interoperability for so many devices to coexist in the same infrastructure, you may ask yourself how much you can be exposed for risks. The more devices means the more people will also be accessing. Therefore, Dante has developed Dante Domain Manager to secure, organize, and take control of your systems. So Dante Domain Manager is a server-based platform that can be installed somewhere in your network, and then with a simple web browser, you will be able to access your DDM server and then monitor each single domain. So the domains will be represented as these white cards, and if all the little lights are green, that means you're fine. But then if something happens, the DDM server will alert you with a red card, and this can also generate an email. So you can be controlling and troubleshooting your system from anywhere in the world. Each domain can be compared to a folder, pretty much as you organize your files in your computer by type, by project, or by date. You can also do the same with your Dante devices, allowing you only to work with the devices that you need. You can also have different levels of user access in different domains. From Dante Controller, users will try to log in into the DDM server, and according to the user level of access, Dante Domain Manager will then authorize that that user will be able to visualize and access and route every single device in that domain. Another feature that DDM offers you is the ability to share audio between domains. So no matter how many domains you may have, how many devices, you will be able to separate some specific channels from a device in domain A and send it to another device at domain B, always with a very, very simple interface provided by Dante Domain Manager. For everybody interested, we are also offering DDM trial licenses. So if you wish, just visit audinate.com/DDM or send me an email, augusto.marcondes@audinate.com, and I will be happy to help you. Thank you very much, and back to you, Nick.
Thank you, guys. Thank you again. And I've seen a couple of questions come in about, as expected, about how possibly people can control the DT16.8 and 16.4 stage boxes without an Allen Heath mixer. And I'm pleased to say that we will soon have a solution for this that I can share with you today. So we have some new software coming soon, hopefully towards the end of the year. What this software application will do, it will control the preamps of one or multiple DT16.8, 16.4W boxes. It's an application for Windows or Mac. It's called DT preamp control, which is self-explanatory. And that means that now you can start using DT stage boxes by Allen Heath in any application with or without an Allen Heath mixer. For example, with third-party digital consoles, or also in applications without a live mixer. So audio distribution of high channel count audio throughout a stadium or an arena or any other installation where maybe there's a matrix processor running on Dante 2, wireless receivers by Shure or other manufacturers running on Dante. You can now distribute all of that audio, taking advantage of the unique form factor of the DT16.8 and DT16.4W, and using this app for the control. So let me see if I can give you a quick preview of the application. This is the main interface of the app. When you launch it, it will automatically discover and detect devices, compatible devices on the Dante network, and list all of the devices on the top left. And it will automatically connect to the top one. If I had multiple 16.8 or 16.4 stage boxes, I would see all of them here, and I would be able to switch to one or the other and display all of their controls on the bottom part of the screen. I can also specify which network interface I want to use for this application. So if I have multiple interfaces, I can choose which one to use for the primary and secondary Dante network. And that's particularly useful, for example, if your Mac or MacBook Pro is also running other protocols or Wi-Fi and so on, you might want to specify which interface to use. On the right side, you can see the name of the unit and the model and the firmware version. Now, this is the control firmware for the preamp control. It's different from the Dante audio firmware, which you can update normally using the Dante firmware updater and Dante controller. But the control firmware by Allen Heath, you can update using this option within the app. And on the bottom part of the screen, you have the 16 sockets or 16 preamps, each one labeled with the name. So this is the name that you can edit in Dante Controller. You cannot edit within the app, but it will display whatever name you assign to that socket in Dante Controller. And then it gives you the option to control the gain value, the pad, and the phantom power on each of the sockets. So it's as simple as that. So let's go back to the presentation a second, and in a few minutes we'll get on to your questions. But before we do that, I just want to touch on a couple of application examples to show you how you can put all of these products together in a meaningful way in 2 or 3 different scenarios. So let's start with a common one, which is front of house and monitor, what we call a monitor split. And when I say monitor, it could be a broadcast console, it could be a streaming console in a house of worship scenario. But just for the sake of argument, let's talk front house and monitor, one with a D-Live system with a CDM32 mix rack, and the other with an SQ digital mixer. You can see that both of them are equipped with Dante cards, and these Dante cards are connected to a primary and secondary switch for redundancy purposes on the network. And the two consoles can share 3 or more DT16-8 stage boxes over Dante and share their preamps. Another application example is a house of worship situation where you have, in this case, a D-Live DM0 engine running all of the audio as a matrix system equipped with Dante, taking audio from the DT164W wall-mounted boxes around the building. There's control options as well for source selection of music or preset changes in the rooms with the IP1 wall plates and the custom control app. And a couple of mobile units with SQ mixers, again, fitted with a Dante card, each to share audio with the main system. And finally, an education example. So again, a matrix processor in the form of an AHM64, in this case, Dante equipped, and sharing audio with a number of rooms, the paging microphone at the reception, speakers in the canteen, using the new DT2002 or 22 breakout boxes. And just a reminder, as I said a couple of minutes ago, because you will now have a preamp control app for control the preamps, it means that you can put a system like this together even without an Allen Heath mixing console and use it with any third-party Dante device, or even simply as a recording or tracking interface to record live into your virtual sound card. Now, a couple of case studies, and then I promise that we will start answering some of the questions. This one is Novum AV, a UK rental company, and they decided very recently to standardize all of their I/O racks using Dante and the DT16-8 stage boxes by Allen Heath. You can see them mounted, rack mounted in a fly case in this case, with very neat cabling and Dante primary and secondary sockets available at the bottom of the rack. They mainly use these racks with their SQ mixers, but again, because they're running Dante, they could be used with any other third-party Dante mixing console as well. This one is the Beretta Center, and this is in Houston, Texas. It's a venue or a group of venues. I think it's 5 different venues, stadiums, arenas, conference center, running something like 4,000 events per year. And about a year ago, they started a major upgrade of their facilities, investing in several D-Live systems and Mi personal monitoring system, all equipped with Dante. And what makes this application or this example stand out from others is the way they distributed all of these devices using Dante and distributing other protocols as well, the control protocols and the GigaAce layer 2 protocol running through VLANs and Cisco switches and a fiber link across the entire campus. So a very impressive networking exercise from the Beretta Center. And finally, Fox Sports, or rather Sonofans, which is supplying virtual crowd enhancement and contributions to the MLS, MLB leagues in the US for Fox Sports. And again, they invested in several Avantis mixers and D-Live mixers. They were originally looking at MADI because of the broadcast situation they are operating in, but then decided to opt for Dante because of their specific needs in terms of networkability, routability, and the amount of sources and I/O points they were playing with. And just to give you a bit of flavor for it, there are 3 engineers working on each live event. One basically does the main mix of the crowd sources, and then you have a dedicated engineer for the home team, a dedicated engineer for the away team, playing triggers and samples and contributing for a more realistic final result. Believe it or not, they are playing with something like 60 channels of Dante audio to come up with the final mix for Fox Sport, and that's obviously without accounting for all of the commentators, presenters, and other sources. So that's simply the crowd contribution. Those 60 channels are mixed down to a quadrophonic 4-channel contribution to the OB Vans and indeed the Fox Sports live broadcast. All right, so that covers my presentation. And I'm going to call on screen Val, my colleague, who has been looking at your questions as they came in. Val, I believe you answered a few already.
I have been tapping away. Hi, everyone. Hi, Nick. I think Gus is also here. Hi, Gus.
Hello.
Right. Yes. So we have had a lot of questions, and I've answered a few, but I've put a few aside for you to share with everyone. So let's see what we've got. So first question, and we've had this a few times already. Can DT168 preamps also be controlled without a mixing desk directly connected to virtual sound card as a computer I/O? And I think, well, you've pretty much answered that question with the software control that you've showed us just now.
Yeah, so just bear with us another few weeks, and you will be able to do that with the DT preamp control app.
Sure. I had an interesting one going a little bit back into your presentation when you were describing the network bridge, on the Dante card, and you can use that network bridge to control Director, for example, to control your mixing console from anywhere on the Dante network. We've had a question of, does that work in the other way? So do you have access to the Dante network from the network port on your D-Live system if that network bridge is enabled?
Yes, you do, as long as control is concerned. So the caveat there is that you wouldn't get any Dante audio going through the D-Live or Avantis network ports, but you can definitely see the Dante network with Dante controller and set up your routing and clock configuration and all of that, certainly.
Yeah, that was absolutely part of the question. So only the control, not the audio. Great. Lots more questions coming in. David's asking, using DT or DX boxes, how does preamp control work using multiple mixers if you're split between a main console, monitor, broadcast? Using DT or using DX boxes, is it the same or is it different depending on which format you're using?
It's a very good question. There are some differences. So when you're using a DX stage box, essentially that DX box connects to one mixer only. And only that mixer will be able to control the preamps of that DX168 or 16.4. Of course, you can then use tie lines in your mixer to relay all of those preamp signals to another mixer for independent mixing, monitor mixing. But the preamp control will only be on that first mixer you connect to. That's not the case with the DT Dante stage boxes, because they can all send Dante audio to multiple mixers. And with Allen Heath mixers, all of the digital mixers will be able to see and control the preamp of the DT168 at the same time. If you're using an Avantis or D-Live, you can also switch on a feature called gain tracking or gain sharing. And what that does, it will compensate automatically with the digital trim on one console if the other console is adjusting the analog gain.
Fantastic, great. Another question we've had a couple of times is there any input metering on the software control for the Dante boxes?
There isn't in the DT preamp control app, there isn't any metering, not at this stage, certainly. Of course, if you've followed software development from Allen Heath in other applications, we always listen to user demand. We always try to keep you happy, essentially. But there is some basic signal monitoring or metering in Dante controller itself. So you can check whether audio is passing through a socket and indeed going through Dante.
Great, fantastic. Another interesting question about the new DT boxes. Are they pure analog or can the preamps be controlled remotely from Allen Heath mixing consoles?
So the new ones, the 2002 and 22, they are analog devices with obviously with converters, then feeding into the Dante, the Dante platform, but they don't have any remote control available.
Okay. Let me see. There's lots coming in. I need to. Yeah, a little bit more technical. So if we're using the network bridge, sorry to come back to that question again. Do you need to have separate IP addresses? Can it have all be on the same IP range? How does that work?
Right. They obviously need unique IP addresses. You need to avoid any IP conflict. Now, theoretically, you can have different subnets coexisting on that control network bridge. However, if you're planning to use the same machine, the same laptop to control Dante and the D-Live or the Avantis, then yes, they need to be on the same subnet. You need to make sure that they have compatible IP addresses. There's a couple of ways you can do that. One is to switch everything to DHCP if you have a DHCP server. Another way you can do that is to make sure that you set static IP addresses to all of your devices, including your laptop and including the Dante card.
Fantastic. A good question from Tobias. How do we handle latency between using DT and DX boxes? Are there any latency differences, and what do we need to take care about when using a mix of DT and DX boxes?
Oh, very interesting. So yes, there will be some subtle differences. So the DX protocol typically is about 8 samples of latency and 96K. So you're talking very minimal latency. Dante latency, Gus, you can help me out in a second with this, but you can customize the latency or set the latency setting per device. And it goes down to something like 250 microseconds at the lowest setting. So you're muted, Gus.
You're muted, Gus.
Gus, you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry for this.
You need to patch your Dante in.
Yeah. If devices are connected to the same switch, so you have one singular only switch in your system, then latencies can go down to 150 microseconds. So 2 switches would be 250 microseconds, and then up to 5 would be something like 500 microseconds, considering there's no other traffic in the same network.
So again, very minimal latency in either case. If you're particularly worried about how to align one with the other, I would say that that's only a consideration if you are feeding, for example, the left side of your line array system with one DX box and the other side with a Dante box, but that's very, very unlikely. So in that case, yeah, you might want to try and align them in time by having exactly the same phase alignment. But otherwise, it shouldn't really matter. If the signals you're mixing together are not completely correlated, like a stereo pair or on a drum kit, then the amount of latency we're talking about will not make any difference whatsoever, even if you're mixing DX and DT on a stage.
Great. What else have we got? A question from Giorgio asking if there's any hardware controller integration for the new Dante controller software.
Excuse me, sorry, was that addressed
That's
to me?
one for Nick, yeah. For our Dante software, is there any hardware integration planned?
As in using external controllers for the controlling the gain and so on? Not really. Again, not at this stage. If there is a demand for that, we can consider it later. But we haven't really thought about that now.
Well, I think we'd say that our mixing consoles are a hardware controller. Obviously, if you're using a mixing console and the software at the same time, any gain changes done on the mixing console of the same socket will also be reflected on the Dante software if you're using that.
Absolutely. Gus, I see you're typing a reply, but if you want to address that to the wider public about how about using Dante on a larger network and some IT networking tips, go ahead.
Absolutely. So I was just waiting for my cue to answer two questions live. One is still about the latency. So in my screen here, I know that it's somehow a little bit tiny for you, but we've seen this slide during my presentation. This slide is the one that explains where the Dante module sits in the audio system. So everything audio related happens before, including the system processing latency. So the system latency, as we say, the conversion latency or whatever audio processes you are implementing in that signal before the Dante module, let's count it pre-transport latency or system latency. From that moment, when those digital values are delivered to the Dante module, we are then, Audinate, the Dante system is then in control of the latency, no matter where you are in the network. So that means that if all your products are connected to the same switch, and you also need to send or receive audio from products 3, 4, 5, 10 switch hops away on a larger network, as long as the products that are communicating with each other have the same latency setting, that time will be considered. So it's the best analogy that I give to students is the idea of an orchestra where you are playing one note at a time, or more than one in a chord, in a cluster if your instrument allows, but you are definitely playing one measure at a time. Dante is delivering the next 2-3 pages of your musical score, but as long as you are in sync with everybody, everybody knows which notes need to be played. That is also to address that question about using different devices with different processing latencies and then being sent to the network. Once that digital signal arrives into the Dante network, we will make sure that they are reproduced or played out in the other end consistently, in sync, and also in phase. So I don't see any reasons why not mix and match. That's actually the one big reason why we offer such a huge ecosystem. Now for the second question, my only answer is there is actually some optimization features that you can do to your Dante network when implementing it into a mixed network or into a converged network. Some of them I'll just mention here are, for example, QoS, IGMP snooping. Of course, when possible, dedicate a broadcast domain or a VLAN only for the Dante system to work. If you're working with redundancy, then it's also very important to keep primary and secondary networks in different broadcast domains so they can do broadcast messages or multicast messages independently, completely separate. But you will arrive at a level where your system will need a further tool for control. That's why Audinate has developed Dante Domain Manager. So, as I am not here to train you on everything, I invite you to visit audinate.com/certify. That's our portal for all things certification related, and then you can spend some good time learning more about this. That's it.
And I can personally recommend the Dante level 3 training. That's really, really useful for all of these networking doubts and questions you might have. Now I see Vali's busy typing, so I'll pick up a couple of the questions that came in.
Thank you, Nick.
It's from Kevin Madden. Hi, Kevin. Nice to see you on this webinar. Could DT preamp control be accessed via third-party devices? So in terms of third-party devices controlling the preamp on our stage boxes directly. That's not planned at the moment, Kevin. Let's move one step at a time. So yes, we are making the boxes universally viable with the DT preamp control app. Whether or not we will then give the control protocol to third parties to integrate, that's not for me to answer today. A couple of other questions very briefly. Tom was asking, so what was the rationale behind not having remote control preamps? And it's a very good question because we do have remote control preamps in the larger stage boxes. With the smallest ones, I think the main reasons were cost. In terms of the cost implication, we wanted to keep the cost and the accessibility of these new breakout boxes as low as possible. And the other consideration was development time. So again, we were keen on releasing these boxes soon. Again, the market will then dictate on whether we would develop a second version later on with maybe remote control. And finally, one from Dan, can the control software select between line or mic input on the 168/164W? There is no switch as such. The only option that you have is the pad switch that you can engage on the 168 and 164W using the DT preamp control software. And the pad will give you 20 dB pad of attenuation, and that is good enough for any line level source. What we use in our preamps for the DT boxes and D-Live is what we call an active pad that will try and keep the impedance constant on the preamp side, and that's why you can use the pad safely for any line level source without worrying about impedance. Any more from your side, Val?
No, I think that's most of them. Anything we haven't covered, we will do our very best to get back to you shortly. I'm going to leave the questions open just after the webinar, and we'll continue to get back to you, just typing stuff in for 5 minutes after the webinar. And anything we don't cover immediately, we'll make sure to get back to you via email in the next couple of days.
Very good. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you guys for your very useful presentation and to answer the questions from the attendees. Thank you, Val, for your work behind the scenes, and goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.